Hi, I'm Laura Nelkin. I'm a knitwear designer. I live in upstate New York in the Finger Lakes region. And welcome to clue number 4 for the cOWL Mystery Knit Along. I have been waiting to shoot this video. I actually kind of put off shooting this last video because I wanted to see what came up in the forums. Mostly I wanted to see what kind of puns came up in the forums before I shot this last one. And I am ready to share with you how to finish off your cOWL. So this has been such a fun mystery knit along. I think it's the fastest mystery knit along I've ever done. One, I think that's because there were only 4 clues, and 2, because every clue has been about 100 yards. So people have really been able to keep up in a way that I haven't seen happen before with the mystery knit along, and it is very fun for me, and it seems like it's been very fun for you as well. What I want to tell you before I dive in and start to show you things is there are a few tiny spoilers in this video. So if you want to wait and not watch this until you have finished through clue 3, you should go ahead and hit pause right now and save this video and like it and come back to it later. For those of you who are ready to watch this, I am about to show you my cOWL mystery knit along up through clue 3. So I've got all of my squares and hexes joined together into the round. And I've got to tell you, this thing does not look like an owl. It really looks like a kind of stressful octopus, don't you think? I think the next time I do a mystery knit along, I should probably name it like what did I come up with? Octocowl and opticowl. I'm going to work on words that are octopus and cowl for another mystery knit along where I do crazy things like I did in this one. I know for some of you, when we got to the end of clue 3, things felt a tiny bit stressful. You have stitch saver everywhere. You have yarn tails everywhere. I told you not to weave in those tails that were parts of the graft. You're not going to weave those in until you have finished and blocked. So what I want to go over is what is happening next with your cOWL. And let's look at that on the needles a little bit together. Okay, I think some of you have guessed what we're doing. What we're doing next with your cOWL is putting stitches from the top back onto one long circular needle and then working a border on that end. And then when you finished that and bound off, you'll be doing the same thing on the other end. So if I held this up again for you to see, basically you've got 2 borders. You've got the top and you've got the bottom. You get to decide which is the top and which is the bottom. So you are going to start on one of these. And if I kind of flip it over and put it under here so that you can see what's going on, what you're going to want to do is start at the upper right hand corner of a square. And I'll just cut my stitch saver right here. I have my stitch saver going on a little bit crazy. And you are going to take those 25 stitches from the top of one of your squares. It doesn't matter which square you start with, and you're going to jam your needle all the way tight on there and then just slide your needle through. And if your stitch saver comes off like it just did on mine, that means I did 2 things, and I always love when this happens in videos. If that happens to you, stop, take a deep breath, and you can see I was able to get those stitches right back on to the needle and then the stitch saver back on. But the reason that happened is because I pulled on my stitch saver instead of pushing on my needle. If you push on your needle, you're not going to be basically pulling your stitch saver off of your needle. So don't do like I did, and then you will have success. After you get those 25 stitches from your square onto your needle, you are then going to go ahead and take 50 stitches that you have held from one side of your hexagon. And you can see I'm starting out by pulling the stitch saver, but then once I have things all lined up, I'm really going to be more like pushing the needle than pulling the stitch saver, and I just pull it as necessary. So those stitches are all kind of dense on there, and then you can just slide things right along. So now I have all of my live stitches from this top of my hexie on my needle, and I'm going to continue like that around until I have 25 stitches from the top of a square, 50 more from the top of the hexie. Do that one more time, and then you're going to end up right back over here, and you'll have a needle on this end as well, and you'll be ready to do the setup round so that you're ready to start working that top border. All right, now that we've talked about that, the next thing that I want to go over with you is picking up stitches, because I know for some people that step right there can be a little bit frustrating, and I'm going to show that to you on a separate swatch. Okay, let's pretend that we are at the point in the pattern where it says PUK 3 stitches, which is pick up and knit 3 stitches. This is happening every time you are in a transition between a square and a hexie, and it's happening right at that graft line that you did at the end of every clues and then in clue 3 when you were joining everything together. And there's a little bit of a trick to picking up these stitches so you don't end up with unnecessary holes. If you went ahead and picked up a stitch right here in this loop right here, you'd see that you'd end up with a giant hole right there. So the first stitch that you want to pick up is right in this purl ridge and this garter bump right here. And I'm just going to put my needle underneath that, wrap my yarn around, and pull it through. And that is my first stitch picked up. And now if I picked up a stitch right here, that would probably work, but I'm going to go ahead to make sure that it's really tidy. And I'm going to pick up a stitch right here in this little garter ridge right here and wrap my yarn around and pull it through. And then the last stitch that I'm going to pick up is in this garter bump on this side of the connecting graft. And I'm going to put my needle in and pull my yarn through. And now what that does is make that nice and tidy right there. That is going to end up getting covered by a purl round on the next round. So don't worry too much about it if you aren't sure about how it looks. And then you're going to go ahead and continue to knit across your hexie stitches once you've done that pickup 3. So it's going to be like that every time you come to the pickup 3 stitches going around. Now, once you've done that, it is time to talk about the construction and what is happening with the increases and decreases on the border, and then also how thick that border is. All right, for this next step, I am about to bring up a piece of my finished cowl onto the table. I'm going to attempt to do it slickly so you can't see too much of it. Know that what I'm about to put under the camera has been blocked versus what I showed you earlier has not been steamed or blocked yet. I did that on purpose so it would look like just what you have on your needles. So I'm going to bring that up right here. If you don't want to see this, you can kind of turn your screen off so you can just hear my voice but not see, or you can kind of turn your screen away. But I want to show you what's happening with the border and what's happening with the increases and decreases, just so you really understand this piece of the construction. So as you look at the border pattern, you will see that there's center double decreases and make one rights and make one lefts. Those center double decreases are centered over the connection points on each side of the square, and you can see that they kind of angle in towards each other a little bit. This is so that the border maintains the shaping that has been created by those squares and hexies. So there's a center double decrease happening right here and a center double decrease happening right here. At the same time that you're working those, you are also working make one rights and make one lefts. This is all written into the pattern. I will link to that below if this video makes you be like, oh, I want to buy that pattern. There are make one rights and make one lefts happening that are increasing a little bit at the top of the hexie to maintain that shape as well. So that is why you're doing those maneuvers. The other thing that I want to show you is the width of the border, because I know some people are going to be wondering about that. The width of the border that I knit on the top and the bottom is about 1.25 inches. If you want your cowl to be wider and you have more yarn, you can certainly work more pairs of garter stitch rows to get your border to be higher if you want that. I really liked this height of border. I didn't think that the cowl needed more width, but I'm sure that most of you are going to have extra MC left over. And if you do have more left over and you want to use more of it, that is what you would do. And this is a good segue into the last thing that I want to talk about for clue 4, which is your yarn. Many of you in the Ravelry group have been saying, I have about this much CC left. Am I going to get to use it? Or I'm worried I don't have enough for clue 4. This is how much CC I had left at the end of the cowl that I'm working on right now. This is my CC5. There's about 17 grams of it. I love my digital scale. I use it all the time. What you're going to do to decide if you can put in that 2 rows of contrast color is before, let's see, let me look at the pattern so I'm saying it correctly. Before you work round 1, so after you've worked the setup rounds, what you should do is take your main color and weigh it on your scale and write that weight down. And then work round 1 and then weigh your main color ball again. Then subtract those 2 weights from each other, and you know how much yarn it took you to knit 1 round. To do the top and bottom border with that contrast color stripe, you need 4 rounds worth of contrast color. So you'll know once you know how much yarn you're using for 1 round if you have enough for 4 rounds. If you have enough for 4 rounds, then you can go ahead and work rounds. Let's see which rounds it is that use. I believe it is rounds 3 and 4 that you will work with your contrast color. If you don't have enough, then continue to work with your main color. You can also do contrast color on one side and not have contrast color on the other side. You could introduce a whole other color of yarn if you want to. If you have a yarn in your stash that you think works beautifully. What I absolutely adore about mystery knit-alongs is you all putting your own personal stamp on things, especially as you start to see how the design develops. It is really, 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 let me say this one more time, really fun for me when you all go wild with mystery knit-alongs. It's one of my favorite pieces of my creative world to watch you be creative as well. So certainly go for it. I am not even in the slightest bit offended if you go ahead and do your own thing at any point in the mystery knit-along. So introduce other colors of yarn. Don't introduce other colors of yarn. Make your border shorter, make your border taller. When you are done with your border, there's just one thing that I would suggest doing, and that is using an Icelandic bind off to finish off your border. I do have a separate video for the Icelandic bind off. I will link to that below. I'll make sure it is in the pattern as well, so you don't have to go ahead and find it. But definitely use that bind off because it looks absolutely beautiful with garter stitch, and it's going to finish that edge and pull it in just a teeny tiny bit to help it maintain the shaping. If you've ever used a bind off that's not quite the correct bind off for a project, you'll know why I feel so passionate about you using the Icelandic bind off for that step. So let's just talk about finishing, and then you are done with your cowls. All right, you are finished. You are going to want to block your cowl by wetting it in some warm water, or you can steam it if you want to. When you go to block it, if you don't want to end up with any like hard lines on the edge of your cowl from leaving it flat, you can use 2 pool noodles, or what I like to use is 2 rolled up hand towels, just like on each end, so that you put your cowl with like I'll just put this on right here, like a towel here and a towel here, or a pool noodle and a pool noodle. And what that will do is make it so you don't end up with any hard lines right there, and let it dry completely, and then weave in your ends. If you want to, before you do that, you could weave in your ends from the bind off, but I really urge you to wait to weave in your ends for those connectors until after you've blocked it, because you'll see as you block it that those grafts are going to kind of want to stretch out and grow a little bit. And if you weave in your end before you do that, it's likely that the end could worm its way back out again when you go to stretch it. It's a really stretchy graft if you play with it. So I suggest weaving those in afterwards. I put that in the pattern as well. And then when you have finished your cowl, I really, really want to see it. And I will put a finished thread into the Ravelry group so you all can post your finished cowls. I'll come up with some kind of amazing gift for you as a giveaway. I'll give you a deadline for that in the Ravelry thread as well. And I'll make sure over on Facebook that people know about that also. I love seeing your finished knits, and I think the rest of you do too. I've been having a really good time how you're like finding owls from your collections and staging little things. Maybe you've found an owl shirt or an owl sweater for that final photo. That is absolutely not necessary. I will use a random number generator for that final contest. So if you just throw your cowl on the ground and take a picture of it, that is just as good as entry as any other entry. Thank you so much for doing this mystery knit along with me, for trusting me. Mystery knit alongs are a big leap of faith. This one was an extra big hoot. I'm sure you're going to agree with me that your cowl is the latest in haute couture. I am so excited to be able to wear mine now that we have made it and Clue 4 is out. I will wait to show you photos of mine until later in November, so you have a chance to oogle each other's mystery cowls. Thank you again. Please come join me for other cowls in the future. It's such a blast to do them with you. Happy knitting.